Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World, and many of you saw the very tragic um, set of events that have occurred with the death of Eric Garner at the hands of police, along with the decision by the grand jury not to indict the officer who was responsible for Mr. Garner's death. It's been really just an event that's really riveted the nation in terms of people really showing solidarity in their concern about police terror, police brutality, the police deaths, racial profiling, and ultimately mass incarceration. Because if you don't have racial profiling, then you're not really going to have as much mass incarceration as you have right now. So, as you can imagine, I am happy to see the progress that's taking place. Now, one of the other things that I value, and that we all value, I hope, is the importance of getting good, accurate information. And one of the people that I love to talk to get good information and insight into a lot of this, is Mr. Ken Williams. Ken is on the line with me. Ken is he spent 20 years with the Brockton Police Department in Massachusetts. He's also a wrongful death investigator, and he runs the company K. Will and Associates. And I want to ask my brother, how you doing today?
How you doing, Doctor? Thank you for having me.
Good. Yeah, absolutely, man. The pleasure's all mine. So let's I guess start where we are. Since Garner's killer, the cop that led to his death, was not indicted, there's been a lot of unrest. I know here in Chicago last night they literally shut down the biggest highway in the city, Lakeshore Drive, and I mean, just people ran out in the streets in front of moving cars, and it was complete chaos. So all over the country, in every city, people are protesting against not just what happened to Mr. Garner, but just the whole idea of police feeling that they're above the law, that they can kill, not kill at will, but create situations where people have died. Um, I guess I'll start with the very basics. Do you agree with the decision not to indict the officer in the Eric Garner case? And also, as a former officer yourself, what insights do you have as far as maybe why the grand jury even came to that conclusion?
Certainly. No, I don't agree with the no bill process in New York on the Eric Gardner situation. A video speaks for itself. It's unbiased information that every citizen can look at. You don't see a black citizen clenching his fist. You don't see a citizen resisting arrest. You see several officers taking a man down for a 50-cent cigarette sale, which is a finable offense. If you want to write him a ticket, a citation, and have him pay a $15 or $20 fine for selling an untaxed cigarette, we don't have a felony in progress or any of the things that may warrant that type of action by police officers. Nor do we have a situation where officers were protecting themselves because they feared an imminent death or fear of imminent death for others because Mr. Garner posed a risk to themselves or others. So what we basically have in New York City is what is long-standing practice throughout the country, which is why so many people are taking to the streets in protest, because they're seeing what we left off last with in our discussion, that black life is not as important as white life. And when we have this inequality that exists, and everyone comes with a bias, black and white, everyone comes with their biases. But at the end of the day, police officers are held to a higher standard. They're trained, they're highly trained. Taxpayer citizens are the people that fund police officers, fund police agencies, fund the government. And fundamentally, black citizens are looking at this and saying, okay, we want a refund on what we're paying out here because we're not getting the same protection and service that white citizens are receiving. In fact, we're being killed unlawfully, and then officers are being exonerated for that. So that's a problem, and that's the reason why I see people out in the street. They're frustrated, and they're showing their frustration by taking it to the streets, and they're disrupting the lives of white citizens that may not get the fundamental fact that black life is as important as white life, and they're trying to make sure that those people that are in the middle class trying to get home from work, that they're being put into the mix to understand where other people see the inequalities.
So let me ask you this: Why do you, so I heard someone kind of talking about this, and I thought about this. I talked to my dad a lot, who was a former cop, and who knows, maybe subconsciously that's why I have so much respect for you, because I respect good officers. I respect officers that take their role seriously, because a good police officer, in my opinion, first of all, is a brave individual for dealing with those kinds of life and death situations on a regular basis. Also, you have to have a capacity to give, because officers are often thrust into situations where you have to care about the problems of people that you just met. And so that's why I refuse to live in a world where we just say all cops are bad, or I can't stand those cops. I don't buy that. We need good cops, and I don't care what anybody thinks about that. And in fact, we need good cops to help us deal with the bad cops,
That's right.
or perhaps even the misguided cops, because I think sometimes bad cops don't realize how bad they are. They because maybe they have some of these biases that you mentioned. That lead them to maybe think that white life is more valuable than black life, or maybe they somehow think that because they've got the law on their side, that they're doing the right thing when they behave in specific ways. So maybe this is a matter of not just dealing with and confronting a problem, but also educating everyone about the issues in our criminal justice system, so that they can make a decision as to whether or not they want to behave as better and more ethical human beings. So that leads to my question: why do you think that so many grand juries, so many prosecutors are so reluctant to indict police officers? Now, I have my theories on it, but I want to hear yours. Why do you think that they're just kind of afraid to even confront the cops when things like this happen?
Certainly. Part of the problem here is that, and it's throughout the entire country, the process is the same, no matter what jurisdiction or state you're in. The process for grand jury is the same. A, the grand jury process is secretive. B, prosecutors rely on the police officers to evaluate physical evidence, to evaluate what is important and what is not important, and also interpret that evidence for a grand jury proceeding to teach laymen why they believe their theories are correct. So in the case of a police officer involved shooting that's questionable, if you have police officers that have biases because they want to protect and serve their own special interests, they have political pressure from a mayor's office that says, hey, look, you know what, this could lead to a serious lawsuit. See what you can do as far as not producing all the evidence at grand jury. Maybe there's just straight up corruption, and the police officers are protecting police officers, outright lying in police reports, outright lying in testimony, and the district attorney's office is it's only receiving a one-sided story. The grand jury process doesn't have a rebuttal process where, for instance, like in Missouri, Officer Wilson went into the grand jury, read his transcript for 4 hours. If there's no rebutting from the prosecutor to challenge the officer's statements, then there's only one version coming out. If you have police investigators from the Internal Affairs Division and crime scene services that are interpreting the data, incorrectly, or trying to afford a person that is a police officer an outrageous benefit of doubt that would not be afforded an ordinary citizen, then you're going to have a tainted system, because, again, laymen who are jurors are only listening to what they want to believe, that these professionals are going to be professional, unbiased, give an honest opinion. And clearly we're seeing throughout the country, when it's black life that has been killed by white life, professionalism goes out the window. That's what I'm saying.
Interesting, interesting. So, I think that everything you said it's quite reasonable. It makes perfect sense, and it certainly provides great insights. And that's why I love to talk to you. And now I want to talk about maybe go a little more between the lines. I mean, you talked about corruption and things like that a little bit, and I even wondered, about cases I've seen where some of these decisions are sometimes made out of fear. Because someone asked me, well, what's the difference between, say, the passage of civil rights legislation in the past, when we marched with Dr. King and got the Civil Rights Act passed and Brown versus Board. What's the difference between that and what's happening now with police officers? And I thought about it, and I said, well, maybe part of it is that in this case, your adversaries have guns. Your adversaries can find out where you live and either and plant drugs on you or find some petty charge to arrest you for, like they did with the brother that filmed the Eric Garner death. They got him on a gun charge, and he said the cops were following him around and stuff like that. And I remember when we worked when Reverend Sharpton and I went to Ohio to work on the case of Kelly Williams Bolar. The woman who was arrested for sending her kids to a school outside of their district. She said that the police, they harassed her. They eventually trumped up some sort of charge to send her father away to prison. I don't know if he went to prison, but I know that I think he did get arrested and stuff like that. And I don't think he would have been arrested had the political heat not gotten so hot. So do you think that there is maybe a fear factor there, not just with prosecutors, but just with anybody, any political figure who confronts the police? Because think about that. I mean, that is effectively your military, right? So you can't be too hard on your soldiers. They're the ones who protect you. Even President Obama. If he were to upset all the law enforcement officials across the country, and let's say he upset the armed forces, I really think that might put his life in jeopardy. And in fact, this is one last example I'll give you, and then I'll let you do the talking. I do know of a conversation that I had with someone where they basically said in their city there was very strong evidence. In fact, he had firsthand evidence that that someone may have bugged the mayor's office in that city, so that in case the political pressure came down on the police department, they would have something to blackmail the mayor's office with, so that they wouldn't so that the pressure wouldn't get too heavy. So with all these kinds of dynamics going on, I mean, do you think that those are real concerns that may cause a prosecutor to say, man, I don't even want to deal with the headache of indicting a cop and having the wrath of the entire police department fall upon me?
Here goes it's a great question, and I'm gonna use a global picture to answer it. There are 300 million citizens in the United States. There are roughly 600,000 professional police officers. 300 million people support the entire government. 300 million people support the police agencies, the local governments. The 300 million people are responsible for the entire system. The police officers as individuals have authority granted to them because of the people. So police officers, a lot of them, have the cart before the horse. That's the reason why it says you serve and protect the citizens. The police aren't supposed to serve and protect themselves. So that being the case, and I see the protests, I see the marches, I see the debate that's happening, between citizens. I don't see much debate between citizens and police. Here goes the solution. And everyone is looking back at the civil rights era for some guidance, because unfortunately history does repeat itself. And we are in a moment where we have Jim Crow in 2014 with people that are armed with guns and bullets and they're trained. Not everybody, but some people in this barrel are rotten, and they're rotten to the core. The people who are good citizens that were in the community, that became police officers, and they lifted their right hand and they swore to protect and serve citizens, and they wrote their signature down in a book as a police officer, and they received a car and a gun and a badge. They're witnessing a fellow employee go out and commit these egregious acts, and they're remaining silent. So it's time. It's imperative that we look at a solution that's going to work to fulfill the obligations of police to protect and serve everybody, which means we've got to get the good cops who are witnessing all these things that are occurring within these police stations to come forward and do so because A, it protects their jobs, B, it's the job that they signed up for, which is to protect and serve the citizens, and C, if they want to keep their integrity and credibility intact, this is what they have to do. And the protests that are happening outside in the street, they're trying to figure out what is the economic sanctions that need to be instituted against the police in order to go and stop the police corruption, stop the excessive force, stop the lying. You've got to go and shut down the money that's going to the police officers from the 300 million citizens that pay the police officers. If you don't control that pipeline, you don't stop or control the decision making that's going on that's harming the 300 million people. So the economic sanctions aren't to necessarily economically sanction the person coming home from work because that person's in the same boat as the 300 million people, right? It's the officers, the grant monies, the funding that they receive, that if they're not held accountable for that funding, where they signed up for that funding and said that they weren't going to falsely certify receipt of those funds and be discriminatory, if we don't shut down that part, we can't solve this problem.
Okay, interesting. Okay, well, you proposed a great solution, and I think we should definitely think about that because you're right. I mean, if you cut off the money, then you're going to change the behavior, right? And I think that's a fundamental truth in a lot of contexts. And I think it's a great idea, and I support that. But but I want to ask. I want to get back to that question about why some of these decisions happen the way they do. I'm really curious if there is a fear that does permeate through those who are charged with policing the police, if you will. That prosecutor or that mayor or that citizen who stands up against the cops. Is there just a fundamental fear of the fact that you're dealing with people who have guns and legal authority? Have you seen that? Just because I can just say that if I were to really confront the Chicago PD on certain issues, my city, I wouldn't be surprised if the Chicago PD officer was knocking at my door or following me around or things like that. And in fact, I've heard that the more I think about it, I've heard more and more cases of that where another woman we tried to help down in Bloomington, she said that when she confronted the cops, that there was a cop sneaking around her house. So do you think that that's part of what drives these crazy illogical decisions, these non-indictments, which are extremely rare? Does that play a role, or is it just standard cronyism?
Yeah, I don't think it plays that much of a role. I think what we have here, we have here, if it were a white person, if Eric Garner was a white citizen in Staten Island and he was jumped on by 6 black police officers of the NYPD, suffocated on a video, does anyone think we wouldn't have an indictment?
You can just drop the mic. You shut me down. That is absolutely a perfect example. You're absolutely correct. I think about, I imagine if he were, say, I think the example I've used is a rich white guy on Wall Street. Let's say he had cocaine in his pocket. A lot of those rich white guys on Wall Street, there's a lot of them use cocaine. He never would have been stopped and frisked and questioned and what are you doing here? And as you mentioned, if you had a bunch of black officers do that to a white guy, especially a wealthy white guy, the indictments would have occurred like that. So I agree. You answered the question. Very, very good information. I really appreciate that, man. Okay, so let me ask you this. Before we go, how can people get in touch with you if they want to, hire you for your services and things like that?
Certainly. I'm on LinkedIn. The easiest way to find me, I think, is through the website KWill Services, KWILLSERVICES.com, KWillServices.com. In there, I have my bio information. It has all my contact information, and people can reach me by email at kwill46125 at verizon.net.
Okay, and I encourage everybody to go check him out. He's got a lot of amazing expertise, and I think that with all the injustices that occur around the country, people like Mr. Williams are valuable resources for those who need someone who knows the system, who can be on your side. So I encourage you to go check him out, and also I encourage you to consider hiring him for any work that you have going on or anything that you might need help with. And me, you don't have to hire me for anything. Just keep coming to check us out. I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins at Your Black World, and let's keep fighting the power. I want people to know that right now, in case you don't know it, you are in the middle of history. This is truly an historic moment. We've captured a type of energy that hasn't really been seen in America since the '60s, and I think we got to keep this momentum going. Let's go fight the power. I am really excited. This is a new day in Black America and in America at large. So until we meet again, please stay strong, be blessed, and be educated. We are gone. Peace.